Hello, hello, and welcome to another Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and I'm here with Anthony Marquetta. Today, we are going to be talking about reviving the church. Uh, hey, Megabuster Shepherd. This was requested by Megabuster Shepherd. Someday, somehow, some way, I'll get him to pay for a subscription and subscribe star. I'm rubbing my hands together, Anthony. I'm rubbing my hands together
In Glee.
in glee. Yes, exactly. It is only glee and would certainly not okay. But so excuse me. I'm still dealing with the end of a sinus infection. Um oh no, he's coughing. So basically our topic of conversation is revival of the church in America. The Protestant church is going to be kind of the focus. We've lost our viewer. He ran away. Um, no, he didn't. Time with medical bills. I know. I'm just giving you a hard time. Uh, well, I don't know that specifically, but we'll pray for you. But I'm just giving you a hard time because I can give people hard times. Uh, so, and it's a complicated thing. It is a big subject. Uh, and it starts from a very complicated place. Whether Catholic or Protestant, a corrupt church is not a church that can be revived as easily as a small church spreading out into the world. Partially because is that there's a good reason why the Catholic and Protestant churches are corrupt as all get out. And that is because they are absolutely filled with corrupt people. I was driving down the highway to volunteer at a strongman competition, which I enjoyed immensely. And basically, this guy came on and he's like, Christians used to be the forefront of social issues. Why aren't we and he basically said, why aren't we SJWs? Um, and he didn't say it in those words. He probably has no idea what that is. But at the same time, he advocated for us to be part of the soldiers of Satan. It's SJWs are of their father, the devil, and will be rewarded as such. However, we have to fight them now. Um, and I will detail some of the stuff that we can do later in another stream. But it's basically the same as Vox's corporate strategies. You hit them with the rules and you keep hitting them, and you don't let them play the pity card. So even with people who are running their own radio shows, are very respected and so on and so forth, they are cucked. I guess is the best way to say it. They are unable to fight the good fight, even though if you provided them with a clear option, right versus wrong, they would choose right. All right. These aren't people who view themselves as evil, and they're not as corrupt or as dysfunctional as your average SJW. So, we have. It's not as bad as it could be. Uh, Megabuster Shepherd says we, I guess Catholics, have a problem with gay priests. Protestants have different issues. Sure, we have problems, but that's the other problems. That's the main thing. Well, it's complicated. Yes, on the surface level, the problem is gay priests. For Protestants, oftentimes the problem is sexual immorality of a different sort. You know, uh, but there's also greed and stuff like that. So, Anthony, anytime you have like a point to make about what I'm saying, just chime in. I know this isn't really for you, and you can just kind of stick around and do whatever. But how are you doing today?
Yeah,
Are you doing fine? Are you doing well?
of course. I've never had a bad day my entire life.
Ooh,
No, in all seriousness, in regards to this subject, so the problem is that the Catholic Church and the various Protestant churches are not even the same type of thing, really, when you get right down to it. So any talk of reviving one and reviving the other are going to be completely there. I don't think that you could really apply the strategies from one to the other, except in a
Right.
very general way. You could, in the sense of Vox Day's, rules for ousting SJWs, which should, in theory, it could apply to any organization.
Mm-hmm.
But so the problem with the Catholic Church versus the problem with the Protestant churches. Number one is in the name. It's the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church is. Meaning that you mentioned it yourself that what are the Protestant churches that avoid corruption? The small ones that break off. In other words, the Protestant churches don't actually avoid corruption. People just leave when they become corrupt.
Yep.
That is, of course, not an option in the Catholic Church. You can't just
I
leave
mean,
the church if it becomes corrupt. It's no longer the Catholic Church, though. That's my point.
yeah,
Then
I
you're
know.
then you're turning it. Then you go to becoming a Protestant church, which of course would defeat the entire point of being a Catholic church. Now, yeah, just for that reason alone, what you need to do in response to this is just something that is totally different between the two of them. Strategies that would possibly apply to one just simply would not or could not apply to the other. Not to mention, it is absolutely true, and as a Catholic, I agree with this. America was founded as a Protestant nation. It was founded as a Protestant nation with Catholic strongholds, but ultimately the founding culture was primarily Protestant, not Catholic,
Yep.
with whatever that entails, which is a variety of things. So the in terms of reviving America, I mean, making America Catholic could mean turning America into something very different, not necessarily bad, arguably even superior, but definitely not what America was when it was founded. So there isn't a whole lot I could do to add to the conversation of how to revive the Protestant churches. That is not, I don't think, a subject I even should be getting. It's not really a subject I even think I should have a lot to say about. So Megabuster Shepherd says the Orthodox are opening gyms and getting ripped, and you respond the Orthodoxy is a meme outside Russia and Eastern Europe. Yeah, so my relationship with Orthodoxy is that the Orthodox are still, from my experience in talking to them, they're still extremely bitter at Rome for things that happened literally over 1,000 years ago. Uh,
Yes.
and they're still like really, really bitter about it. This is going to be extreme. This is going to come across as extremely biased and unfair. So I apologize to the Ortho Bros in advance. I actually love you guys, but my experience is this: the Catholic Church is willing to try and meet halfway and make some compromises to try and merge with the Orthodox churches, and the Orthodox churches will do nothing.
Yep.
They will not compromise. They will do absolutely nothing because they're still angry about things that happened 500, 600, 700, over 1,000 years ago. And you could blame the Catholic Church for this, but one thing you can't blame the Catholic Church for is the second schism, which in the between the Constantinopolitan church, between, I believe, like the Church of Nicaea and the Constantinople Church. I'll have to look it up to double check my sources and all of that. But the Orthodox Church recently, like within the past 5 or 10 years or so, uh, they had another schism. You can't blame Rome for that one. Has nothing to do with us. So clearly, Orthodoxy has its own issues that it needs to be dealing with quite outside of Rome. Megabuster Shepherd says, we did sack Constantinople. So that's a sticking point with me. No, we did not. The Roman Church actually condemned the sack of Constantinople almost immediately, as soon as they heard about it, and the church has never endorsed the sacking of Constantinople. The people from the Fourth Crusade went outside the bounds of what they were trying to do, and the goal of the Crusade, and sacked Constantinople out of greed. Church immediately condemned it. Orthodox who are mad at the Fourth Crusade are mad at people that the Roman Church has literally never supported at any point in their history.
So also,
There is no issue there. or
They
there shouldn't be, not in the long term. Rome has never, at any point in the entire history of this incident, backed the actions of the Fourth Crusade.
and uh, even recently, there was a big convocation of churches and church leaders uh, to do the usual thing and talk it out and stuff like that. And basically, the Orthodox came in and they're like, "Oh right, they actually showed up." Waited, sat down, waited 5 minutes while everyone was getting ready, stood up and left. And the reason why they left is because one of the leaders of the thing, organizers, had tweeted something mean about orthodoxy like 4 years ago. Like they
That's
are
pretty funny.
vindictive, bearded little craps when they're bad, and the Orthodox Church is the state arm of is the religious arm of the Russian government in all its forms. Um, anytime you see a Russian Orthodox Church, it's almost certainly a spy agency for the Russians. Like that. That's
Now,
it. It's not
yeah,
that bad.
I have
Like
great respect for Eastern Christianity, which has a Catholic element to it as well, by the way, which you might know from talking with me. There are the Eastern churches in
yep,
communion with Rome. So I have great respect for Eastern Christianity and for the Orthodox as a whole, as a group. I think are generally pretty faithful people. With that said, my patience does not extend so far to the Orthodox churches as organizations. I think, this is my honest opinion, so I'm sorry. I know that there are going to be Orthodox who have a totally different take on this, and they are welcome too. But my take on it is that they are extremely inflexible. They are not willing to compromise, and they splinter and splinter and splinter. And, that's
yep.
supposed to be like the opposite of what you do. Of course, this is also happening with the Protestant churches, and the Catholic Church has its own extremely serious, grave issues, but that is not one of them.
And like the thing with Protestant church splitting is that we don't view it as like somebody changed it. Well, so back in like the
Right, it's a
90s,
different thing.
right? Like when a Protestant church splits, it's because of two reasons. One, a powerful enough personality decided to break away from a pastor you disagreed with, which I view as bad. It is bad in all its forms if the pastor is not in grave error. The key is if the pastor is not in grave error. If they have a disagreement on whether they're an amillennialist or a premillennialist rapturist, gangster rapturist, if you will, uh, then it's not important enough to split the church over. Sure, there are issues. If you believe in non pre tribulation, there are some verses you have to explain away, just like there are verses you have to explain away if you're a pre tribulational rapturist. It's a complicated issue, and it's to do with the future, and it doesn't matter till it happens. Um, Nearly as much as people say it does, but it was a big fighting thing in the 90s. I don't know why we got caught up in the end times in the 90s, the Protestant church specifically, but it was a thing up until the aughts. Um, Technically, I think one person was supposed to have the rapture happening like on my literal birthday, which I thought was very amusing, or like within a day of it or a week of it or something. Um, so so it's complicated. It's a big complicated issue, and it's not as simple as we split off. The second issue is that the corruption of the church that they're in gets so bad, and they cannot remove the people from it, so they just leave, um, which is considered a much more serious sort of thing. The Left Behind craze, yeah, basically. But that hit the zeitgeist. It did not create the zeitgeist. So
Hmm.
basically, we left Tower Grove Baptist Church, my family, as one, for a very simple reason. The pastor was clearly a grifter, and we didn't want to have any part of it. We could tell he was a grifter. The pastor at the time did not follow the proper rules for bringing in a new pastor. There were supposed to be elders, there were supposed to be votes, there were supposed to be periods of examination, but the pastor was used to being a strong man. They gave him whatever he wanted, and they just accepted it. On the day of the vote, we sat down, we had the vote, and my family, 4 members, were the only 4 votes dissenting from it. he was like, he was the type of guy who's like, yeah, I'm for the youth. Okay, name 3 problems with the youth and don't mention and no sexual issues. He didn't even understand the question. I literally said, not including sexual issues. Name 3 problems that are with the youth, and it's easy: depression, debt, not starting families. It's not hard. Anyone who's studied the issue should know off the top of their head what are 3 issues affecting young people today, not including sexual perversion, pornography, or whatever. You know, it's not hard. He couldn't even answer that. It was clear. The writing was on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
People were commenting, "Oh, he didn't really answer that question any well." It didn't matter because they all voted for him anyway. One guy said he was getting senile. He said that we should have it voted by acclamation. My entire family tensed, and I was about to actually stand up and start yelling, and other things like that. Like it was gonna be, like the whole family prepared itself for a fight. But the pastor saw us and is like, "I don't want this. No, the votes stay." He was not voted in by acclamation, which is kind of a dumb thing anyway. Basically, Fiona Wolf says gatekeeping is important more than just hobbies. From the sound of it, yes. Basically, he let in a wolf in sheep's clothing. And don't get me wrong, this was a well dressed, well spoken wolf. Whew. I left the church immediately. I didn't like formally leave, I just never came back. And I went to different places and I did my own thing for a bit. And the family stuck with it for a bit because all their friends are there and stuff like that. But eventually, they just had to stop. And we went to another church where we're very happy. Pastor Cleggert has been on this show. He's a great guy. I've shared around a lot of his African missions, that sort of thing. Dave Gibson lasted about 6 months, and then he said, I just had one of my father died. I realized that life is too precious to be a pastor, and I need to rethink things. That is so ass backwards that I can see it farting as it goes. I can literally see Satan's fingers puppeting the mouth. Because life is precious, as a pastor, you have to do your work. It is completely backwards from what it was supposed to be. He was rude to my brother who is autistic. He was rude to my family because he knew that we did not like him. He wasn't a good man. So we left the church. And we went to a different church. Now, a lot of people say that Protestants have 20,000 denominations. We do not. We have about 130, give or take, denominations that matter. And then we have about 19,000 individual churches who call themselves their own thing. Most churches are part of the Baptist convention, the Southern Baptist one, of course, as well. And there are other conventions that are followed. Overall, there are. I gotta find that thing. Serpents in white clothing, yeah, basically. Pharisee types. I actually calculated it out, but there are like there are thousands of churches in each convention, and it covers the entire U.S. You will find Southern Baptist churches in the north. Is it very common? No, but they're there. It's we're a weird people. Maybe I put it in the rhetoric folder. There we go. So basically, somebody went because there are 130 something Protestant sexual offense cases. It shouldn't make the Philadelphia corruption, the Pennsylvania corruption, I can't remember, that bad. So, but the problem is that there's a matter of scale that nobody wants to address. There are so fewer Protestant churches to Catholic churches in the clergy, like clergy members, that to say 130 something versus a similar number from the Catholic side of things is to bury the lead so deep as to not see the air. Basically, I'm going to read out this thing because it was a Matt Walsh quote, and I hate him with a passion. I hate Matt Walsh as he tends to cuck when things turn south. I also hate stuff like this because it has the scale completely off the chart.
I've disliked Walsh since reading Dalrock. Uh,
Yeah,
he was one of the people who was one of Dalrock's constant targets.
yep,
Uh, he's also like really good at fooling people. You know, an old guard bow tie conservative.
yeah.
That's what he is.
He's a gatekeeper of the worst sort. But here's what he did. He did the usual, Protestants are just as bad as this or that. It was one of those stupid song and dances he does. I'm just gonna read this verbatim. The Southern Baptist Convention is a polite fiction that boomers agree on, but most saner generations don't. Each church is an island that follows the same basic set of rules and philosophy, and either, as in the majority, ignore most of the stuff that happens in the Southern Baptist Convention, um, and pursue Christ apart from a corrupted and weak authority. There is almost no money ties to the convention besides donations. Basically, nobody pays for the privilege of being a Southern Baptist. If anyone said, "Hey, you got to pay $100 a service to be a Southern Baptist," we would laugh about it. We would. It would be so hilarious. Like we would lose ourselves laughing. Um, and besides that, no one's willing to sue over the name because it's just impossible. There are 47,200 Southern Baptist churches um, as of 2012. It's probably less since then. By comparison, there are about 25,000 Catholic churches, give or take, including the 250 plus cathedrals and basilicas, one of which there are several cathedrals in St. Louis and one basilica. Considering that these are double the southern, sorry, these are half the Southern Baptist Convention churches over the entire landmass of the U.S., and they found some 300 church leaders versus some 300 clergy in Pennsylvania. There are 957 parishes, Catholic parishes, in the state of Pennsylvania. I assume that there is some change, some overlap, but they do not disappear. A Protestant pastor has an average lifespan about 10 years in any given church, but a Catholic clergy could stay in one place to the end of their lives. What's more, no Protestant church knowingly covers another church's sins. It is antithetical for another church to go to a church and say, "We will help you bury these bodies." No, we're gonna tear them apart, if only for spite. The Catholic Church protected and even rewarded the monsters that preyed on people. And I'm not doing this to beat on Catholics. I'm doing this to put a sense of scale into your mind and how big the Protestant church is. And
So
hold on.
I'm going to
Let me
interject for a moment.
let me finish it up
Finish your
though.
point,
Yep. So
please do.
the numbers are for the Southern Baptist Convention is that there I rounded all the numbers up to favor the Catholic Church. So in other words, if there was a number I could skew to favor the Catholic Church, I took it because I wanted it to be fair. 350 out of 47,200 is 0.008%. Um, 0.009 if you round up to 400 versus 300 out of 957 parishes, and that's about 3%. There's no equivalency. It's about 37.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted by a priest, clergy, excuse me, than by a pastor in the United States. And I say this for the simple reason of scale and the different problems that assault the church at different times. Right now, this is the Catholic problem. At other times, I guarantee you that there's a rabbit hole of black charismatic churches where basically, if they don't get enough money in the till, they will pass the plates around until they hit a goal. It is awful. It is corrupt, and I guarantee you the amount of sexual abuse in those those churches are hideous. Because it's basically 20% men to 80% women. Um, it's witch doctrine in some cases, especially when you get into the really charismatic places. Sorry, I didn't want to shut you up, but I had to finish my
No,
thought
no.
before we moved off.
I think it's important you finish your point because what I'm going to say is maybe not what you expect. I'm not going to give a defense of the Catholic Church exactly, which I don't think it deserves for any of the scandals, nor would any good Catholic, I think, disagree with you. or any remotely faithful, or disagree with me, I mean, or any remotely faithful Catholic. With that said, I think that the problem of what happened in terms of the sex abuse scandal in the church is very, very different than the problem in the Catholic Church as presented by the media, if
Yep,
that makes sense. So,
it does.
what I'm going to explain is this. The in terms of the pure numbers, the sexual abuse scandal in the Catholic Church is actually, and this is going to be surprising, but wait for me to finish because I'm not going
It's
to
fine. It's
by
fine.
any means take the church off the hook here. It's really pretty unremarkable. In fact, if anything, as somebody pointed out, going by the numbers in the recent Pennsylvania abuse report, the Catholic Church, the conclusion you would need to come to is that celibacy decreases the rate of sexual abuse since it's much higher among, of course, the public school teacher population, which is a number always brought up. The conclusion you would come to with such a comment is celibacy decreases the amount of sexual abuse in the church. And honestly, I wouldn't even be shocked if there was some truth to that, even though there's really no reason to think it either. But if there were a study and somebody proved that, I wouldn't be surprised. In terms of a pure numbers game, looking at the percentage of abuse in the church compared to other organizations and things around the world, it's not really that high. It is well within the
Yeah.
numbers you would expect from an organization of its size. In fact, if anything, it's only slightly lower. But that's not even but that was never really the problem, even though that's what the media will have you believe is the problem. The problem was the reaction of the higher ups to this. Now, I am of the opinion that the reason that they were able, it's that so many people got away with this for such a long time. Not only did they get away with this for such a long time, they were shuffled around and covered up and even promoted. There
Yep.
was like a ringleader group at the very high end of people who either knew about this or should have known about this and refused to look into it and refused to do anything about it, as the seminaries were inundated with, as was mentioned by Megabuster Shepard earlier. I sound like Ben Shapiro when I'm at 2 times speed. Wow,
Oh. 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 Oh.
I don't
Oh.
even know what to say to that, but I feel insulted.
Oh.
Uh, anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
the the struggle in the Catholic Church is a struggle of a homosexual hierarchy promoting homosexual priests and then promoting doctrines that make this all be much less of a big deal than it formerly would have been. I recall Jason Rennie posting some stricture from, like, I don't know, the 1500s or whatever, where formerly if a priest was caught diddling one of the choir boys, they were to be publicly whipped, removed from public office, constantly surrounded by multiple people, multiple other priests who watch them at all times and spend their life basically cloistered in prayer, which should, of course, be the immediate reaction. Jail, now in the modern day when the strictures of the government and the church are no longer the same thing, you would also have jail in there, but it's the same idea. You get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, the same basic idea of, obviously the reaction needs to be don't let them around any children, constantly watch them, publicly punish them, and then make sure that they are nowhere that they could possibly do any harm ever again. And also, you don't hide it. This is a public punishment, it's a whipping.
Yep.
That's not something that you do in private. So the problem with the Catholic Church was the shuffling around of higher ups and people, and the hierarchy that enabled all of this, and that made sure that people weren't being punished, and that the problem wasn't being taken seriously. That was the actual issue. And I believe that the reason this was allowed to flourish was that St. John Paul II started getting seriously ill. There was an assassination attempt on him, famously, and he
Yep.
survived for quite a long time after that, but his health deteriorated rapidly. And I believe that what happened is his first priority when he came in was, quite reasonably, I believe, getting the communist scourge out of the church, which he did. John Paul II is almost universally considered, both by secular and not so secular historians as being one of the three key figures involved in ending communism in Europe, along with Ronald Reagan and Michael Gorbachev.
Yep.
Uh, and he absolutely and deserves all credit for that because the communism was a scourge in the church both then and now. And John Paul II did a remarkable thing getting rid of it. But that became his first priority. I don't think he ever really believed that there was a scandal that big under him. And before he could look into it more deeply and actually start, taking charge of things and really rooting out the corruption, he was shot and then he got ill. And then he really couldn't keep a handle on anything. And in his private journals, he talks about considering retirement many times over the years because of his illness. And ultimately, he decides against it because he wanted to show an example to the world of how to die with dignity, which is a noble goal that I appreciate, but unfortunately, it allowed the sexual abuse scandal to flourish unchecked for many, many years, which is a horrifying tragedy.
Yep.
Uh, Benedict XVI, as we know, resigned. We don't know at we will never really know exactly what caused him to do it. Did he resign because he didn't think he was able to properly do this and he thought maybe that somebody younger should be in who was more capable of doing it? Or did he resign because he was too afraid to take these people on? Did he resign because he was implicated in it, which I certainly hope is not the case, but who even knows? I don't think that's the case from my understanding of Benedict XVI. To be clear, he seems to be a very a a genuinely holy person. But why did he resign? What was the reasoning for it? We don't know. But what we do know is he didn't really solve any of these issues. And Francis is in place, and Francis has basically done the opposite of what he should be doing, which is that he's gone back to promoting people who were involved in the scandal and shuffling them along to different parishes without actually punishing them.
Yep.
So Francis has been the absolute worst thing for the church. Uh, he is one of the worst popes. I firmly believe this, and I've said this, and I've gotten people go look at the historical context, and I have, and I still think this is the case. Francis belongs within the bottom five, maybe three popes in the history of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
Uh, not that he is necessarily as bad a person. I don't know him personally, so I can't say what his actual motivations are. We can all make our guesses, but
Right.
in terms of being a leader of the Catholic Church, in his particular place and time, no, he's not as outwardly scandalous as, the 21-year-old popes who got in because daddy paid for the papacy and then took on hookers while they were in the Vatican, which is a real thing, and I wish I remembered the name of that pope. But or
Oh,
the Medici popes who again were
yeah.
very obviously, corrupt. But Francis is particularly bad for the particular place and time that he is in. He is the exact opposite of what the church needed and is making the crisis worse. He has improved nothing, and he has actively harmed the church in many different areas. Megabuster Shepherd says he's no Borgia. Well, the Borgias might have been worse people. I don't know Francis personally, so I can't really say, though I've heard mixed things. I've heard people say I met him and he seems to be a really holy guy, and I've read people go, it's all an act. I don't know
Right.
which is true.
So,
But,
like the
he's certainly not as outwardly scandalous as a Borgia. What his issue is what he's doing to the church as the leader, which is he's doing everything that the exact opposite of what needs to be done is what he's doing, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah. So, the deep lore on Francis is that he might have been a card holder for a lot of the. Hey, hey, Ken. He might have been a card holder for a lot of the corruption and child abuse in Argentina, and might even have a lot of blackmail material on various very important people. He is a creature of the globalists, the Prometheans.
Yeah, so I don't want to believe that about the Holy Father, and I don't have any proof that's true. However, it would explain some of his actions, particularly the shuffling around
Yep.
of some of the sexual abuse people. Because why else would you do it?
Right.
Something doesn't make sense. Like there's you just don't even need to do anything. All you have to do is just ignore it, And he's
Yep.
not doing that, he is actively harming. So,
So
why?
I just we'll put a pin in it because honestly, this is a whole stream that we could talk about this. We could have you rank your top
Mhm.
five worst popes. Um, the thing with
Yeah,
the
right?
Borgias is that Leo actually curtailed a lot of power and changed things once he got in office. He was an evil man. He paid for his office. However, he has a weirdly high number of reform. He didn't need to have the amount of reforms that he did. So either they were a concession to somebody who probably deserved it more, or he came in, realized that there were problems, and tried to stop them so that the Pope wasn't completely ruined. Um, Keep in mind that problems with the Pope have been a thing every couple hundred years forever, from the fights in front of Constantine with Saint Nick versus Arius, from all the debates that led to the various schisms every 500 years, to the anti-popes. I do have a joke. I'm sorry, Anthony. I do have a joke that a character is going to be taken by space pirates, and his mother, who is a space explorer, will bribe these pirates with a world and the phone number of a nunnery which came in under the wrong anti-pope, who lost the fight, and are now unfortunately no longer nuns. And thus suddenly find themselves needing husbands. And if only the pirates are willing to take a bath, they could be converted. It's a joke. It's a joke though. Like you know how Castle and the
Pretty
Sky Pirates.
funny.
You know, Sky Pirates are yeah. Anyway, it's an elaborate joke that will make sense in context. Um, the problem is in the Catholic Church is in the leadership, and it's so hard in the
Yes.
leadership that it is one of those things where I could go into the Vatican. The Vatican could get nuked by some jihadi or whatever, and honestly, God's that you could make a very strong argument that God's work was done. It's an argument you never want to make. It is a horrible argument, but it is an argument that could be made with seriousness. Uh, the Protestant church's problem is at the roots, not the top. And I'm not talking about its history. Its history was that Martin Luther tried to reform the Catholic Church, and they tried to kill him for it. That's the most base type of story I could describe it in the time I have allotted. In reality, it was more complicated. He wasn't very popular because he was an irascible man who was willing to fight people. And he nailed it up because he was tired of people, doing this. He made it more difficult for himself at the same time it needed to happen. Like he was the type of pugilist who could make it happen. And then things got over there. There were always, always, always splinter groups from the church that were not part of it and were their own thing. The Anabaptists, the Montanists, the Cathars, who were a heretical organization.
FYI, I found the Pope I was talking about because I remembered the quote from the Catholic Encyclopedia, so looked up the quote,
Yeah.
where he was called a disgrace to the chair of Peter. This is, quote, Benedict the Ninth. He is the only person to ever be Pope twice, and the only man to ever openly sell the papacy. Like, other people sold it unofficially under the radar,
Right, right.
money under the table. He said highest bidder gets the chair.
Oh my goodness. That's horrible.
He was pretty bad.
Yep. Yep. Timeline. So I'm looking
I
up a.
believe he was also the first gay pope.
Ugh, ugh. So there were things apart from the Catholic Church that you know were genuine splinter groups, and some of them were also not heretical somehow. It's really impressive. Most of these things were wiped out or destroyed. The problem is that um, not just World War II, but also like the burnings and stuff like that happened in every city burned a lot of histories. Fox's Book of Mars is a good start, but also there are like histories of non-Catholic denominations, non-Catholic, non-Orthodox, um, which uh, basically have disappeared from history for the simple reason is that we can't find any information on them other than some stuff. Like there were universities in the Balkans that were neither Orthodox nor Catholic. They were just they weren't like Baptists, or whatever, but they were different stuff. Um, I'm trying to get a list of them so because they're interesting. Let's see here. Ben Pax Romana says, Ben, you and Luther have a lot of similarities now that I think of it. It's one thing to engage in simony; it's another to be obvious about it. Yeah, yeah. Like the amount of corruption that was going on was insane. Like the Reformation was justified. However, it should have kept the church intact, and they didn't let it. And then what they did was they created the Counter Reformation, and then had the goal to say, because we had a Counter Reformation, we don't have you Protestants are in error. And it's like go fuck yourself, like straight up. Like that's my response to that. Like it's in the Catechism, which didn't the Catechism, as most Catholics know it, did not exist until after the Reformation. I could go on. I'm so angry about it. I have to stop talking about it because I will fight
So
it.
the
It
Catechism of the Catholic Church, as created nowadays, if you talk to the hardcore traditionalists among us, they don't really like the current Catechism of the Catholic Church, which uses very loose and strange language and explains things in a really loosey goosey way, and they keep editing it to
yep.
match up with whatever weird thing that Francis has said lately. And we go, no, that's not true. Like Francis will come out and say, so the death penalty is always wrong. Now, this is straight up false. There is no way to justify it in Catholic teaching that you could disagree with the death penalty in the modern day on prudential grounds, but you cannot argue. You literally cannot argue. Edward Feser has written a book about this. Uh, the good Dr. Edward Fesser, that the death penalty is contrary to Catholic teaching. It's just not. But if you listen to Francis, you would just think, well, I guess they changed the rule, and then they changed the catechism. So now you need to have some serious rules lawyering as people try and read it with their eyes squinted and the book turned upside down in the moonlight to try and figure out how this doesn't contradict the much easier to say proposition of the death penalty is not immoral, which is the actual truth. I mean, you could just write that, but they don't. The Baltimore Catechism is often preferred by traditionalists, which is done in the question and answer style and designed specifically for young children. The Baltimore Catechism is often written as, like, what is the meaning of life? And they'll just have the answer written there, which I think is actually kind of based.
Eh. All right.
But
Yeah.
the modern catechism is kind of, mostly though, it's kind of a joke because they keep editing it to be less and less useful to Catholics who actually want the answer to a question. And then it becomes that you need to like interpret the catechism, which is bizarre since that's supposed to be the point of the catechism. It's supposed to do that interpretation.
Yeah.
Like
So,
that's why it exists in theory.
yep. Megabuster Shepherd says, I honestly think that the Protestant Reformation was God's will, if not necessarily the fallout. Pax Romana says, my favorite splinter religion from the Catholics were the Waldensians in the Italian Piedmont. There's an amazing book called Rora, Rora, that's about their last stand fighting off Catholic troops. We might see a schism in the Catholic Church in our day. No, we will not. And for the simple reason is that the people are cocked.
No,
Uh,
no, we won't.
it's not going to happen.
Well, we will. We have actually. Scratch that. We can and we have, and they're called the Society of St. Pius X, or the SSPX. Currently, however, they are in union with Rome, despite people trying to claim the contrary. And
Yep.
status at Facebook. However, they were so. To answer your question, yes, there was a schism. Pope Benedict XVI was actually the guy who healed that schism. Uh, they are currently in communion with Rome. However, there are still issues between the two organizations.
But the thing
There
is,
won't be a large scale schism, though,
right.
of the dramatic type that we just saw between the Orthodox churches recently, for example.
And even then, I would
Nor
argue
do
that
I think there
it's
should be.
unimportant. Like I view any Orthodox schism as basically unimportant in the grand scheme of things until proven otherwise.
Oof,
Uh,
oof. Harsh but true.
it's harsh but true. Like, orthodoxy, orthobros are a meme, and they will stay a meme. And like it's not about whether something is based or not. It's about scripture and the Bible and God. Like every Protestant has the standard of knowing the scripture for themselves. That is the standard. Catholics, they don't have that standard in the same way that Protestants do. Every Protestant in the ideal form, they don't. They don't. Most of them don't. Most of them are stupid. But in the ideal form, should be able to stand and give an answer just like Martin Luther did. Sure, it's I don't believe in none of that nonsense because my grandpappy never believed in that nonsense, and I don't need you for Jesus Christ. Like it doesn't need to be complex, but you need to give a statement of faith, an ability to say, this is what I believe, and be able to say it in your own words. Not that I'm saying that there's many different interpretations, but that you should be able to stand and answer. If I get captured, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna curse and cuss and laugh and stuff like that. But I know what and how I am going to say, during the quote unquote martyrdom, during the next riots, after the next thing. And it's going to be very clearly that Jesus is, the Son of God and that he rose again from the dead. It's it's not complicated. Christianity is not complicated in its barest form. I have heard of churches that have been started because some dude found a single page of Luke. I think it was Luke for this story, and basically, heard this. It was Jesus on the cross. There was enough to it that he, uh, you know, understood what it meant, and started crying. He founded a church, and eventually a missionary found them, gave them a full Bible, and they expanded across a large part of China. Like this stuff is powerful in its most base form. We could make things complicated, but it's not the problem. The problem with the Protestant church right now is that not enough people want revival. Not enough people are praying for revival. Even I have problems praying and also praying for revival. It's there's so much to do before that can happen, and it has to get so much worse before it can happen that I can only say it's on God's time. People have left the church. When I went to church as a kid, I had peers all over the place. I had people I could be friends with, and then I was forced to leave the church because my dad started in another church somewhere else. It was dumb, it was stupid, but dad thought he had to do it. If it was God blessed, hey, I'm all for it. But at the same time, there was negative impacts to the decision. Uh, and I watched as every time I came back to it, visited people. It was a rare visit. I was able to go to a youth group with other people my age in it. Oh, what a treat! And there were less every time. And you would watch them disappear. When the parents stopped forcing their kids to come to church, they stopped coming to church. So you have an
Hmm.
entire generation who thought they had to go to church. There was never any sort of thing where if you don't come to a Catholic church and say confession, ooh, I don't know what'll happen when you die. That's another 1,000 years in purgatory or whatever. And I'm being facetious. But, there was never anything like that. Once saved, always saved is a very strong Protestant saying. Of course, that's very reductive because, it's a very complicated subject. But, you know, watching there be less and less people, watching there less opportunities to socialize just for socialization. You know, it wasn't there. The videos were emotional dreck. Sure, they made you feel. Just a second. Sure, they made you feel something in the moment, but they were worthless theologically. Like, I aced all my Bible drills and Bible study stuff just because I learned the scripture, because I enjoyed learning the scripture, because I enjoyed that stuff. And it, oh, it was very frustrating. It was very hard to deal with it. Um, and now I deal with people and there's almost a resentfulness towards church. Why did I have to go to church? It doesn't apply to anything. Part of that is the parents. Boomers. Once again, boomers have ruined everything. You know what? I'll say this. We won't have revival until every boomer has perished from the earth. I'll make that bet. I'll make that saying. For the simple reason is that they poisoned it. They and the generations before them poisoned it because they didn't pass on their beliefs. They didn't pass on Christianity. They so if you imagine it like a sacred fire, they did not fuel the sacred fire. So there's people like you and me, Anthony, who are coming up the steps of the church, and we're going before it, and we're saying, oh God, why have you forsaken our nation?" Well, our nation forsook God first. Like, it's he loves us, each individual, and I can point to various moments in my life where God has stuck his finger in to do something. All right, I've seen it work. I've seen it happen. He's still active. He performs miracles. I know somebody who has performed miracles. Besides my father, and it's it's just a ruining of what's there. So we have to rebuild it. Well, guess what? It's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it. Us in the Superversive movement, creating pieces of art that point out evil, but also point out good, that do more than just create these sort of like vague ideas and then go, ho ho, it's whatever you believe, though. You know, we don't do that. We hold to the good, the beautiful, and the true. That's part of the groundwork. Even though we're in a golden age where we can read for who knows how long every book we want, we can find stuff 3,000 years old in our local bookstores. Used books everywhere. At the same time, we are an intellectually paupered race. I had Jack Morrow. If you're on our Subscribe Star, you can read the Wild. You can listen to the Wild Hunt. Mordred calls wrecks Jack Morrow's car and then calls him a pauper to his face. He's not a pauper because he's poor. Jack Morrow isn't really poor, even if he doesn't carry a lot of cash. He's a pauper because Jack Morrow has a spiritual problem. He can't, even though he prays, he tries to pray, he tries to be spiritual. He doesn't have that oomph yet. He doesn't have that wherewithal to pray in every disaster. Sure, he can do it when he's out of the fight and he just needs to rest or something, but it's not the same as doing it in action, as I've seen some people do. It's a spiritual problem, and it comes from the people. Sure, there's corrupt people everywhere. I walked out of John MacArthur's church because he was a filthy Calvinist. He was spouting heresy, and I walked out. I have spoken against pastors for less. But then it's a mega church, and honestly, I'm not about to do that to an old man for no reason other than to be dramatic. It's not going to do anything. All right. I've called out pastors for harboring sin in the church because their sister was a lesbian. Like, I will go there. I will fight it out. But standing up and shouting predestination doesn't exist as you think it doesn't get anywhere because it's not a good argument. It's not a good rhetoric. All right. Fiona Wolf says Grandma reads the Baltimore Catechisms. That's the bad one, right?
No, that's the new one.
Oh,
Or
okay.
the older one, I mean. That's the older
Good,
one.
good, good. Pax
So,
Romana says
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk about catechisms.
I'm not talking about the catechism.
Oh,
That
okay.
wasn't what I was going to bring up.
Go for it. Go for it.
Don't worry.
You sure?
Anyway, the best catechism. No. Uh,
Damn it, Anthony. You betrayed me.
so yeah, hits mute. So today is the catechism episode of Superversive
No.
Live. No. What I was going to say is this. So I've talked to you about this before in the Discord, and you agreed with me on some of this and some you didn't. But I have never heard God.
Right.
I have never had a religious experience. Never have I seen in any time at any point have I seen God come down, and he has never spoken to me. He has never in my presence spoken to anyone, performed a public miracle. Now that he has done in your presence, I am aware.
Yep.
He has not with me. Now, I have no doubt that God exists, but my faith in God comes from a look at what my it comes from a variety of things, a logical level, but of course nothing is ever pure logic. So it also comes from what life is, seeing what life is for people who have God in their lives versus people who do not.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and just seeing the difference between the two of them. You could say that it's all just, it's a logical thing, right? But even Dr. Edward Fesser is, as John C. Wright, I remember years and years ago, probably forgets he wrote this, but pointed out, Edward Fesser is the only person that I know of who ever converted to uh, not just Catholicism, Christianity based purely off of logical arguments. But even Dr. Fesser mentions in his conversion story where he taught philosophy and he was an atheist and he was teaching the arguments for the existence of God, and eventually he realized that he literally could not, and he would tell this is why they don't work, and eventually he realized that the arguments he was using he could no longer actually say didn't work anymore, which is fascinating in its own way. But
Yep.
even he mentions that after 9/11, it was the first time in, I think he said like 20 years or something that he had dropped to his knees and actually prayed, and that was a religious catalyst for reigniting his faith. That emotional catalyst, I think, does need to be there, and you could
Yep.
call that a movement of the Holy Spirit too, if you'd like, depending on your perspective and on what such a thing would look like. But yeah, where I'm trying to get at with all of this is that I don't consider myself a particularly good Christian. I don't pray as much as I should. I am not as religious as I should be. And this ends up manifesting itself in a voice that appears at the back of my head all the time. If I tell people, yes, I am a Christian, or yes, I am a Catholic, I hear a voice, and maybe this is the voice of God, but it seems just as likely to me anyway that it's my own m- manifesting guilt. Not that the two are necessarily disconnected. Uh, they're pretty much the same thing. But you hear a voice saying, "Are you actually?" And the "are you actually" is always there in the back of my head. I am a Catholic, I am a Christian, but are you actually? Like, would anybody really be able to guess if they met you? You know, if they talk to you, would anybody know? What are you doing? How is it affecting your life? Like, you
Yep.
say you're a Christian, you say you're a Catholic, but what does that mean? Are you actually? And since 2018 specifically, which is when I had a sort of reversion to the church and to religion generally, I have been trying to come up with an answer to that question, a proper answer, a "are you actually" answer. And I'm wondering if that is the problem with the modern church, in a sense. It's a bunch of people who will, especially in the older generations, because the younger generations just aren't bothering,
Yep.
who, if you ask them, will say that they're a Christian, but then if you go, "Are you actually?" and they won't really have an answer. Like,
What does
what,
that mean? Well, I feel
yeah, I'm a
that
Christian. Are you actually? Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Am I actually? Of course I am. Okay, how does it affect your life? In
Yep.
what way? Christ said, "If you love Him, you keep the commandments." Do you do that? And they go, "What? What commandments?" You go, "Oh, okay. So you go to church, every Sunday." Which, by the way, I hear this all the time from priests, and I actually think that's extremely optimistic. Priests going, just because you go to church once a week every Sunday, you do the bare minimum, and then your children leave the faith. I actually think that's wrong. I think if you go to church every Sunday, it is quite likely that you are actually quite religious,
Yep.
and the people who are leaving the and don't get me wrong, I could see why a priest would not realize this because they're literally talking to people who they see coming once a week every Sunday, and they're trying to emphasize to them to go more often or to take it more seriously or whatever, which is fine. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that there's a bit of a blind spot there in that the problem is not the people who are going to church every Sunday, who are probably quite religious. It's that people say that they believe you need to go to church every Sunday, but they don't really mean it. Like they don't actually do it and they don't think it's that big of a deal. You get the Creaster Catholics, Christmas and Easter, right?
Which
Which is
are a
always when
Protestant
church.
thing too. Like
Hmm.
it's a universal thing. These Creaster, I've never heard that before. I love it. They show up
It's a
once a
good one.
year. It's a good one.
Yeah. So the thing with the Catholic Church, though, like if you go every Sunday, you actually are probably quite religious. I mean, going during the week is something that's simply not feasible for most people, including myself. I probably would go at least once or so if I could, but I can't. Just isn't just isn't an opportunity that I have. But that isn't really the point. I think that it's this sort of spiritual apathy that's the real
Yep.
issue with the modern church. This idea of people who just kind of see the church as a thing, it's there. I will distinctly remember, learning like if we don't find a Catholic church that's good. When I was younger, it was just find a Protestant church that'll take you. Nowadays I think that that's actually inappropriate for both Catholics and Protestants.
Yep.
I don't think that anybody should have that attitude towards the church that they attend.
Yep.
Um, but this was sort of how my family thought. We were Catholics because we were Italian. We have an Italian family. Everybody in our family was Catholic. Ironically, my aunt is a Protestant. Now, my aunt has tried to lecture me on things like prayer to the saints, not meanly. My aunt's actually a very faithful Christian, and I you know I love my aunt dearly. She is a faithful Christian. She is indeed a Christian. She prays all of that stuff. But like she has tried to lecture me on theology, but also she reads Joel Osteen. So
Oh
yeah,
no. Oh
I I
no.
go- I go. I'm sorry, but I can't take you seriously right now. You read Joel Osteen.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
Joel.
she like genuinely does not understand why I have a problem with that because like in fact she would get angry at me if I really started digging into it because I despise Joel Osteen. I consider him of the devil.
Yes, he is of the
He is a
devil.
servant of the father. Yeah, he's a servant of the father of lies, and he is of the devil. And if I were to actually push this point with her, it would probably cause an argument. Because she genuinely like does not understand why I would think that. But
So,
I think, from my perspective, it's incredibly obvious, and it actually surprises me more that people are fooled by his huckster act. But I guess it makes sense.
I'll go over it, but we have a lot of comments come up. Um and we need to go over them before I forget. But I can tell you exactly why he's bad. And why he's so successful. And it's a very American thing. Bradford Walker says no sane man complains when he sees a father letting a disobedient child suffer the consequences of their disobedience. If he be charitable, he backs up the father with the necessary task. Megabuster Shepherd, I believe in your response to seeing or hearing some spiritual activity. He says that he saw a demon. Catholic guilt is legendary, chimes in Ken. Fiona Wolf, raised by a Baptist and a Catholic. Interesting in the house. Oh, I'm sure. But there is this wonderful tombstone in England of a Catholic wife and a Protestant man. And it is a handshake in the Catholic lot. into the Protestant lot, and they're buried right next to each other, but with a fence separating them. The Catholics are famous for their being Creaster Christians, only church in Christmas and Easter. Something about Florida. Um, Creaster, something, something. Apathy is playing out in books and other mediums of entertainment, which is why people read the classics. Megabusted Shepherd says Joel Osteen jokes incoming. Megabusted Shepherd says do good for yourself and you will enrich others. So Joel Osteen is popular in the same exact reason that self-help books are popular. He
Yeah.
he provides a sort of feel goodness that you pay ridiculous amounts of money for. Popov, who was famously the subject or one of the subjects of a Super Eye Patch Wolf video, would go on there, perform miracles through adrenaline and plants, as well as having people look up his guests and then cherry pick the people he had looked up. And a whole bunch of other things. Right now, he sells holy water, except it's miracle spring water that will solve all your ills for $1,000, and other things besides. He is an evil man. His wife is evil, just like him, and they're part of this sort of social strata of Protestants, who, including Joel Osteen, who are hucksters, grifters, and witch doctors. They are actually very big in Africa right now because their lives are so miserable. They think they can be like Americans if they follow these charismatic teachings. And also, charismatics tend to play well in Africa, just because it's a very visual thing. If you're saying you're speaking with God and you're foaming at the mouth and screaming, that's a hard argument to diss. Even though you can make fun of it and mocking it is the best answer, next to "Thou art wrong, and I rebuke you before the Lord for it," um, it's not nearly as easy to deal with. That's the reason why the Catholics have a lot of rules for this stuff set out, but Protestants don't have the same amount of answers. But also, they don't have the same issues when it comes to leadership. Joel Osteen is only the leader of his church and any churches that his loins spawned somehow. Um, they say that his small group division is actually really good. But at the same time, I'm like, you're still sitting in a church listening to Joel Osteen. I don't care how good your small groups are. You're sitting in a church listening to Joel Osteen. Televangelism was a mistake,
Who is
absolutely.
the worst?
Who is the worst?
Yes. No, I am saying that Joel Osteen is the worst.
Yep. He and others like him have done all kinds of BS, including one time, and in utter seriousness, they were saying this, by the way, is that they needed another private jet so that they didn't have to sit with the people because he felt that some old woman was giving him the evil eye and setting a devil on him. And this wasn't anyone particular I can recall. It wasn't Benny Hinn, Joel Osteen, or Popov, but like he unironically said that. It was even an advertisement on TV, on this Christian network. It was bad. It wasn't good. Benny Hinn is the worst. Benny Hinn is bad. Benny Hinn is bad, but he's not
He's
subtle
up
enough.
there.
He's up there, but the thing is that Joel Osteen is subtle. Joel Osteen knows how to play it, and he knows how to skirt the layers. You see, I'm gonna look up something real quick. He's not. Uh, how do I want to put it? He does that self help stuff, but he doesn't really go full heresy. Like it's subtle. He will try not to mention Christ, but if he does, he makes sure it's always in glowing terms, or he just straight up lies about it. Like it's weird. It's this devilish evil is the best way I can put it. right now Hillsong's being rocked by sex scandals. Uh, there's all kinds of issues. All kinds of issues. Um, I'm trying to find. There was a famous Ravi Zachariah. There we go. Uh, Ravi Zachariah and others like him tend to have sex scandals, but they preach the gospel and they preach the gospel well. If 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 you had to put a gun to their heads and said choose a sex scandal or give up the sex scandals and preach the gospel, they'd be like, "I'll preach the gospel. That was what I was already doing. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, I was just screwing people on the side. Like, that was just a thing I did. Like it's not the same." The problem is that when you get to hereditable, her, heritage, hered, inherited titles, um, heritable titles. There we go. For pastors and stuff like that is when it gets really bad. Partially because the children tend to turn into incels. So once they have power, their sex abuse gets wild. Like there's this one guy who was called like a boy prophet of God, and he preached when he was like 9 years old, which is bad. It is unhealthy as all get out for that to happen. It is bad. It is the worst. Like just because there's whole bunches of psychological issues that just come up. But basically, he was accused of sexual assault because he tried to paw up a woman he was driving with, who was his girlfriend, and it got real creepy. Uh, it's it's not something anyone of the world would say. They would laugh at him because he's pathetic, and it was pathetic. It was an incel action. He acted like an incel. He was cringe. He was cringe and not based at all. But even when later on other things happened, they weren't I'm screwing boys. It's I felt up somebody and asked for a blowjob. Like that's what happens. Then you have pastors like Joel Osteen. I don't think Joel Osteen cheats on his wife for the simple reason is that he's too slick a man to get caught to do that stuff. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I think Joel Osteen is in it purely for the money.
exactly. It's not the same thing as other people. Benny Hinn is in there for the money, but also for the fame. He wants to be in the center. Joel Osteen wants to be in the center too, but he'd rather have the check. Let Benny Hinn slap people around with his coat and fly to Africa to slap Africans around with his blessed coat. And it's weird. It is weird. I hate Benny Hinn. I hate Joel Osteen. The big thing with Joel Osteen is that he was a part of the Name It and Claim It crowd, where basically if this one guy was like, "Yeah, I worked at a car dealership, and I look out and somebody's pouring water over one of my cars." I walked out, and the person said, "I asked him, what are you doing?" "Well, I am blessing this with this holy water I got from Joel Osteen or whoever." And it's supposed to the spirit will give me the thing because I am naming it and claiming it and baptizing it before the Lord. And of course he called the cops, which is the
Naming
appropriate
and
reaction.
naming and claiming literally the stupidest thing that I could ever that I can imagine actually that people actually believe. It's so dumb.
You sure you want to say that? You sure you want to say this is stupid? Oh, I'm kidding. We can go deeper. We can go deeper. Um, can I go deeper? No.
Remember the giant ark they built in Kentucky with state money? That's actually kind of based.
Yeah, that was based. Actually, so the
It's also incredibly stupid because that's literally the one and only disaster God promised not to inflict upon us. But
yep.
sure, ark.
Okay,
You would think that that was the one thing you wouldn't have to worry about, like that specific one, and that's what they spend their money on. But sure, okay.
Yep. Now, to be fair to them, it's mostly a museum. Like they did it to prove it could be done. Like, it's a lot less complicated than the memes say. To be fair to them, because I wish to be
Yeah, I
fair to
know.
them.
I mean, I know
Uh,
that the actual ark was actually just like a gigantic wooden cube that just
yeah,
floated in the ocean.
giant barge. We make bigger ships now. Like it's
It's not even that big.
it's not even that big. Uh, There's one in Missouri too, and it's expensive to get in.
Yeah, there are several Ark museums like around the
Yep.
world that you can visit that I'm sure are probably quite interesting, but
Yeah.
it's still like if you're building the Ark to because you're worried that God will flood the world, that's literally the one and only disaster God promised not to do. Like you would think that that was the one thing you wouldn't worry about, but I don't know.
Hey,
I guess people are paranoid.
the paranoia. So let's see here. Uh, I don't know about the commercials you're seeing, Fiona Wolf. Sorry. I do
Hey,
imagine.
hey, wait.
Hmm?
Hold the phone. I got a new idea for a Superversive live stream. Joel Osteen's Your Best Life Now, 7 Steps to Living at Your Full Potential was turned into a board game.
Oh,
Playing it on
oh,
air, baby.
oh, ah,
Don't think I won't, too. I'll do it.
okay,
I mean, obviously, I'll get it off eBay so that I don't actually buy it from and give Joel Osteen any more money. But
right. But he needs that
and
third jet. He needs that
if
third
anything,
jet.
giving money to somebody who is trying to get rid of the book is probably a service. So, I'm actually looking this up.
All right, if you can
eBay.
find it and arrange it, we'll see what we can do about it, and we'll invite people
We're
like Ken and other
gonna
people
be
on it.
we're gonna live stream the Your Best Life Now board game. Wow, the book has a 4.6 of 5 on Amazon. Your
Don't
Best
worry too
Life
much about
Now board game.
that.
Ken Ken says I'll play that game on air too. Yes. Rick Falwell says looking at how much room on the Ark argues for a local flood, which in no way goes against the Bible, in my opinion. That is exegesis that I am not doing. Oh man, this game on Board Game Geek, it's got a 1.8 out of 10.
Oh
On
no.
Amazon, it has a 2.4 out of 5. Now, for those who don't know Amazon, besides the fact that that's below half, if you are at a 3 or lower on Amazon, that's really bad.
Yep.
And if you're below 4, it's pretty bad. You should.
Yep. So the argument for the local flood versus
Uh,
what? So I I am straight up a worldwide flood guy, but also I unironically believe the world's about 15 to 20,000 years old. Um, so it
endless
depends.
game and a used version. Don't. Oh, hey, I have a coupon. Different color. I'm also seeing the version from Walmart for 54.89. So
Ugh,
that's a bargain. Uh,
that's a disgusting price. That's expensive. Ugh. But it's Joel Osteen. It's
the
worth it.
seriously, like looking at these bad reviews actually makes me more excited.
Yeah.
Uh, it makes me curious.
All
Like
right.
it's probably going to be a blast to play if we're just mocking it the whole time. It climb the mountain as you discover the power of your thoughts and words.
Ugh,
Let go of the past. Find strength through adversity. Live to give and
ugh.
choose to be happy.
Ah,
I'll
ah.
stop for now because we gotta save some of this for the day that we actually play it. But
Right.
2 to 6 players, so we got 3 right here. That's 3 more.
Right.
April's in.
Yep.
That's 4. We got 2 more people.
So.
And Ken asks, "Are you more blessed by God if you win or lose?" Win, obviously. Do you not follow Joel Osteen?
Sir, do you
I
not
mean, come on.
understand? You don't understand. The whole thing is about blessings. You never lose with Joel. Joel never loses. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a thing where, like Loki, everyone wins. But Ugh.
That would actually be fantastic. We got 4 people, and depending on how long the game goes, we could even do multiple rounds. Oh man, it's out of stock on overstock. We're on a hunt right now.
Right.
Buying this for $20 or less. Let's try
So
shopping.
basically, the
Your
thing
best.
that we're
Yes, I
talking of,
found one
oh my goodness, that we're talking about,
from eBay.
yeah, eBay,
$13.95.
and it's
I'm
not
buying it.
from like
I'm doing it right
Osteen,
now.
A. It's not from like Joel Osteen, except he scrambled the letters in his name just to get people on the flip side. He's got a warehouse full of millions of these things, and he just sells them under different names. Anyway, so yeah, all right. I guess we're doing this. Uh,
We need 2 more people.
I could probably convince Jason. I'm gonna try and convince Jason, but we do need two
I
more
bet you
people,
Jason would do it.
and we'll try to get somebody else. We'll see. We'll see. We'll play around with it. All right. So, like, what we're talking about here is basically Christian culture. The thing about Christian culture is that Christian culture isn't very Christian at all, and it's barely a culture. Christianity has always worked best working within the culture of the people who believe in it. And I don't mean in the sense that people get saved better if they're Chinese people acting like Chinese people, because Chinese people act like bugmen on the best of days. I'm talking when it takes the aesthetics and ideas of that culture
Amazing.
and push through. It doesn't really replace
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
anything.
whoa.
What?
Hold on here. Shipping is 1930.
Oh,
That's
that's
gonna be a no for me, dog.
all right. Well, now that you've done this, I pretty much demand that it happens, Anthony.
Oh, it
Anthony.
will happen. I just gotta find it. Gotta
Okay.
find the right one.
Okay. But like with with Americans, the Protestant values took on so hard because for the simple reason is that we're a pragmatic and industrious people. Even I can't take vacations. Ken will tell you that when I take a vacation, I still get work done, and I don't even try to get work done. I literally just keep doing work. I don't stop working. It's annoying. I will play a video game and I will listen to an audio track and audio edit in between the turn changes. Like that's how bad it gets sometimes. So
I'm sorry. I just read Ken. We just need to name and claim this board game to come to us, and the Lord will provide.
it's to the spirit. But why should Ken cheat a godly man of his board game money? Come on, Ken. Ken. Anyway, uh, I'm messing
Playing
with
time
you.
is a solid 60 minutes. Damn.
Ooh. So
We're gonna get some good content out of this.
we're gonna get content. So so it, Christianity sort of like grows it and encourages it. All of a sudden, America becomes the most industrious nation in the world from literally nothing. Uh, from like just barely having some huts on the side of Massachusetts Bay to, a global superpower in time. Like it took Rome to be a power like 700 years, give or take, um, before it was an empire. It took us much less time to do that. And we're a greater empire than Rome ever was, except we're not as cool as Rome was, which is a pity. And our emperors are much more pathetic. So it's, and there's cycles and stuff like that to it. But I'm just saying that, we rolled up our sleeves and went for it. Um, then we have places like England, where they had this adventurous spirit, this Christian masculinity as an ideal that their Victorian countrymen lived for. People forget that.
All right,
Wait,
found it for less than $20.
oh my god. We are also failing a lot faster than any other empire. Yes, because we work very industriously to fail. We will fail harder than anyone else. We will fail on time and under budget.
We will fail bigly.
Bigly indeed. You know, what's a couple billionaire bankruptcies between friends? Um, I miss him every day, Anthony.
I do, yeah. 1964.
45 lies. Please
Is it
play that
worth it?
Trump goes to prison. You are banned.
Oh wow, I'm actually happy. We got a troll.
I know, right?
Block.
Blocked.
Damn, who that we must be getting big, guys. We do have 11 viewers this live stream, which is shockingly high.
Right?
Maybe the excitement over the board game live stream is getting around.
Oh, who is this 45 lies? What does this refer to? It's probably a bot.
Peter Wolf says live fast and die hard.
Yeah, exactly. He gets
Bradford
it.
Walker says the sooner the American Empire collapses, the better. I guess.
So,
Should I really be throwing out $19.64 on this board game? The answer is yes. Of course I should. I'm hitting. Hey,
so basically, it's a spoken word piece about the CIA, apparently. So who even knows? It's a bunch of rapists, gangster rapists. Uh, I say rapist because I like that better than rapper for reasons.
and also because it's almost rapist.
Exactly.
Yes, Ken will chip in 1/3 of the cost. What is 1/3 of 1964?
It's six. It's $6 and 37 cents.
1964 divided by 3 is $6.55.
I was
Really, if you want to
close.
round up. If you want to round up, $6.55.
We should find somebody who can DM. I have no DMing books, no player handbooks or anything like that.
I have never done any sort of Dungeons and Dragons or RPGs in my life because it looks like work.
You can try to guilt me. Here's the thing. If anyone tries to guilt me for anything, I will literally do the opposite just to be a contrarian. My mom used to try that all the time, and my response was, Mom, you're trying to guilt me, so no. What? No, you can't make me do anything by guilting me. I refuse to do it on principle. And eventually I'd do it, except not because she guilted me. Like, I would literally let it ride for a while and then do it after she had asked me nicely without guilting me. And it has worked out well. She has not guilted me in years. Um,
Ooh, guys, I should get it by May 8th. That is Saturday. That means if everything goes well, you might have it by the next Superversive live stream.
no, 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 no. We'll do it after. We'll let's wait until it's in hand and then see how God blesses us to do it. Okay. I,
This is God's will, and you know it. God wants us to play this game, Ben.
Yep, yep. A.M. Freeman likes to do very loose RPGs. I'm not very rule crunchy. Well, Jeff Rowe Johnson has something to say about that. I've been enjoying watching the D&D fighting just because it's so esoteric. Uh, I don't understand it, and I just find it amusing because it's like you're rolling the dice wrong. You need to roll more dice. Uh, Rick Farwell says, "Glad the price wasn't 1998 divided by 3. That's a bad sign." Yeah, 666. Megabuster Shepherd says, "I'd run 5e if I had a headset." Joseph Misinek said, "Got second Pfizer shot. I feel like crap." I don't know
Many
what
such cases.
many such cases, and I don't know why you're bringing that up. I would recommend buying a bottle of Popov's Holy Mineral Water. I understand that it can do miracles. In fact, I will help you out. Um, so I am all kinds of willing to play D&D. There we go. Um, I did Popov. I misspelled it, and it was
No,
Popov
nobody
vodka.
cares. So at the Blue Army Shrine to Our Lady of Fatima, you could buy water from lords, which strikes me as very, I don't know, cynical. Like, I guess I could see.
I have
Hold
no idea
on, Ben.
what.
Did I lose you for a moment?
No, I'm here. Why? Did you hear
Okay.
something?
No, it's just that whenever it goes silent, I'm always worried that that means my mic is not working because my setup's crap. So Lord's
Ah,
Water,
it
Our
says,
Lady of.
"Do not
Go
ingest the
ahead.
miracle spring water on the website." Ah.
Nice. Holstein cures the coof. Is there nothing this man can't do? You have no idea how much fun I am going to have with this game. I will have a blast. People will be freaked out by the amount of fun that I'm having, and I don't know why.
So, I'm of the opinion
Cat
that
says, "Don't you do know the church's history with selling relics and indulgences, right?" Yes, and people have always taken to that so well, haven't they? Uh, Anyway, A.M. Freeman asks why. Believe she's asking about why I found that kind of cynical. I don't know. It's just the fact it's supposed to be literally a miracle spring because of an appearance by the Blessed Virgin Mary, and I could buy it as hand sanitizer. Like, doesn't that seem a little bit off?
no,
You
why
know,
would you
isn't
say
it a miracle? Should you be selling miracles? Is that how that works?
that? Oh my goodness, he's still like on air all the time.
Who?
Pop off. Ugh.
A.M. Freeman said we had water from Lord's Water. We've used it all up now. Uh, I don't know. I guess that there's actually
And he's got a
uh
donation page, and it
nice.
puts in the numbers for you. It starts off at 17.99.
Ken goes, "Yes, Anthony, that does sound off to me." Well, thank you, Ken. I get the implication.
I'm of the opinion, by the way, that we were hit with a few bots, or trolls, or whistlers, dog whistlers.
I sort of hope so. That amuses me if that's true.
I mean, yeah. The big one, I guess, was the guy 45 Lies, which is a statement about the quote unquote 45 lies Trump said, and then quote unquote, um, and then Joseph Minisek. I have no Misinek. I feel unfortunate that you got the second Pfizer shot and were sick, but I have no idea why you mentioned that to us. And while we love you deeply, stay, like that's suspicious. Acting like that and talking about it is suspicious. We're not going to fight over it.
That's a very innocent question. How blessed were you by that water, April? I'm sure that that was ve- very innocently asked. Uh, yeah, I don't know. There's just the idea that, like, supposedly the water has healing powers because of an apparition, and fine, like, I get that, but does that really, like, how are we extending this? Have we rules lawyered it that, like, now if you bottle it and sell it, the miracle magic stays with it? Like, doesn't that seem a little bit too commodified for a miracle? But
Yep.
whatever.
So Peter Popov's website has a what we believe tenets of faith, and it leads to oops, this page can't be found. Ah. Oh my goodness, this website is
Amazing.
gold. It's gold.
That is actually kind of amazing.
There isn't even a saved version. It's never existed. All right.
My family is going to find it so freaking strange when this board game shows up to our house. It's, they're
All
gonna be
right.
like, "Who ordered this?" They go, "Did you order a Joel Osteen board game?" And I'm gonna be like, "Chad, yes."
Of course.
Don't I seem like the sort of person who would order Joel Osteen merchandise?
Elvish Menace. Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's see here. Uh, I just like American Christian culture, like this stuff, because it's part of it and people try it. Though I nearly dated a girl
So,
who wrote a Christian coloring book that had one good review from herself, and it's like, you know what? I dodged a bullet. I dodged a bullet. I don't care.
nearly dated, based.
Right. Uh. Oh yeah, I remember this level.
Rick
Uh.
Farrell says your aunt will be so happy, Anthony. I'll invite her to the stream.
We could have fun.
No, I actually won't because it will cause fights if I do.
It
But
will actually.
because I will be doing nothing but just brutally mocking this game.
No, you can't just make fun of Joel Osteen. No, you can't. Anyway. Uh,
So, to be clear here, my aunt is actually like, a hardcore born again Christian, and like she's legitimately, a person of God who I actually have great respect for, but this is a blind spot with her. In my opinion.
Joyce Myers is another big one. Um, she has the whole like women teaching women sort of shtick, which she uses. But the problem is it's Christian feminism. Uh,
Also, women only old women should be teaching young women, and it should be on how to be better wives. The Bible's fairly specific. People try and make that whole thing. They try and turn that whole thing more.
yeah.
Try and think of how to put it. Use it as a license to do whatever they want to. As long as it's a woman teaching a woman,
Yep. It's like
and
no,
that's not how that works.
you're right. You're subverting the household.
The Bible's actually is pretty specific about it, and it should only be done in certain specific circumstances.
Yep.
No, Ben, don't date that girl. I remember the Sylvia Brown reincarnation craze of the early aughts. What?
What?
I got to admit, I don't.
I'm looking this up.
I I don't know that. Wasn't Sylvia Brown the super depressed poet? No, no, that was
This.
Sylvia Plath.
There we go.
Uh, Sylvia Brown. I don't even know who that is. Sylvia Brown. If I look up, here's the thing: if I type in Sylvia, first thing that comes up, Sylvia Plath. Second, Sylvia Likens, who I've never heard of. Third is Sylvia Brown.
Oh no. Her book is called Soul's Perfection.
Oh, she's a psychic.
There we
This
go.
reminds me, by the way, in a very indirect process of association, association-ish way. Did you see Eye Patch Wolf's new video?
I have been away from my computer the entire day. I don't even know if new chapters of Shonen Jump were out.
Some were, but it's Golden Week in Japan, so a lot were
Ugh.
on break. But anyway, Spy Family had a new chapter, and it was pretty good.
Ooh.
So we're not discussing reviving the church anymore? I don't have anything to add. This is all Ben. Go and blame
So
him.
so
Uh,
I do, but we're talking about it. So we're not talking about it directly because honestly, it's people like Joel Osteen need to get hit by lightning until they leave the church or die. And it needs to happen en masse, and people just need to leave the church. I know that sounds weird saying you bring revival by leaving the church, but it is entirely about so yeah, we do get off topic all the time. But basically, we are entirely going to have to cut the dead weight as much as possible. Um, people have to
So
give it up.
I think that to revive the Catholic Church, the best thing that could happen is that we would need a firebrand pope to come out, and if he doesn't excommunicate a bunch of people, which he might not have the authority to technically or whatever, we need someone who comes and is so incendiary that there is a mass exodus from the church. Uh,
Yep.
that's really the only way to do it. I also actually think that it would be probably a good thing, and this is going against the grain a little bit, if the church did like sell off a lot of its wealth and things. Don't get me wrong, I just straight up disagree with the argument that, the church should sell off all of its property because it has all that value. Churches bring value.
Yep.
Beauty brings value, art brings value, spirit and spiritual value. There is a value to St. Peter's and to Notre Dame and to the cathedrals and whatever that the church owns. With that said,
Yep.
uh, I do think that the church could. The churches, the Vatican banks are famously corrupt, and in fact, it was rumored early on when Francis was elected, and I find this plausible, that he was elected specifically to get the Vatican banks under control. That's not how it ended up, obviously, or at least if it ended up that way, it certainly doesn't look like it did. So, but I find the rumor plausible because the Vatican banks are famously corrupt. So, the church giving up a lot of its wealth and donating it, I actually am not necessarily against. I don't think it should sell any of its architecture or anything silly like
Right.
that. But uh, I do think that getting like a back to the roots type thing with the church would make sense. Seeing and one thing that absolutely should be the case, and I think should happen, is that there needs to be. This is imperative. It is necessary for the long term health of the church. Not survival. Survival is a little bit different, but the long term health of the church is that there needs to be a purge of the seminaries. I mean
Yep.
a purge that will take out like something like 80% or so of the seminarians and the people running the seminaries. People need to be told there also needs to be more just telling people straight up that they shouldn't be priests. They don't have the temperament for it. People in the seminaries need to be fired. Seminaries should be shut down. This seems counterproductive because there is a vocations crisis, but it would 100% be by far the best thing to solve the vocations crisis would be shutting down roughly 80% of the seminaries and or at the very least purging the teachers there and replacing them with orthodox teachers who are handpicked by some firebrand pope. You know,
I
and
know. I know.
for the whole Pell mini scandal. Yes, the charges were with Pell. The charges were false. Ben, are you there?
I was not there. My internet disconnected me. No, Susan. No, please. We're sorry. We're actually down to 4 viewers. Oh, that's a pity. That hurts. Uh,
We only have like 14 minutes left of a normal stream time, so
yeah. So I'm gonna rant about. Let's see here. No. So it was streaming from my computer. If I was off the internet, I just couldn't do it. So I'm gonna
I
rant
see.
about
Okay.
Protestantism. To have a revival, to revive the quote unquote Protestant church, such as it is, you need enough people to not consider themselves Christians for God to do work. If somebody believes they're a Christian, they're not going to repent of their sin. I have an uncle who has lived only for himself. He has immense wealth. A very important man. He views himself as a Christian. He has never once raised his hand to help us in our poverty that I know of. And if my father refused help, he was a fool. But there's no signs, outward signs at all, that he's a Christian. He believes himself a Christian. The I don't even think he owns a Bible. He doesn't even have a library. The vast majority of Americans, a large part of them, still consider themselves Christian. However, as a poll from Vox Day, pulled from somewhere else, shows up, about 80% of the population, or something ridiculous like that, does not consider itself Christian, but a vast majority of them seem to be syncretists. They believe in a group in beliefs that many call Christian, that are basically do good, don't be evil, that sort of thing. It is not Christianity. The idea that we could have revival and still have the vast majority of evil, wicked people, because that's the key here. People without Christ are wicked, and I am wicked with Christ, except I now have a conscience that works better, among other things. Um, if they do not believe they need salvation, they will not look for it. They will not receive it. The fact is that Lord, Lord, didn't we perform miracles? Didn't we do this in your name? He's just gonna say, "I didn't know you, you people. You know, get away from me. You know, get out of my face." I can't remember the whole verse offhand. Sorry. There's there's a whole bunch of stuff to it, like that needs to be done. But the biggest thing is things need to get worse. Joel Osteen needs to repent and give up his wealth. Not just donate a large sum to it. He needs to take a vow of poverty. He needs to go so far from his avarice, his sin, that if you met him on the street, he needs to be living hand to mouth, literally God providing him. In that way, it's not going to give him salvation, but it'll make him holy. Like, same with Peter Popov and others. They need to repent of their evil and work hard to correct it, and at the same time, literally live the opposite to what sinful life is. There's no, there's no. Oh well, you know, you can keep the mansion. There's no, you know, oh you can do this or that. You can keep the jets. No, everything must go. They must repent 100%. Not because it'll get them into heaven, but because it's how you live the Christian life. Living a life of affluence and ease, and then being like, and I can have Christ too, even though I've dedicated my entire life to making money and occasionally sending a dribble to missionaries and charitable organizations, doesn't work. It never works. It's not even conceivable that it works. The reason why everyone was so unimpressed by Pope Francis, and even though people call it Pope Francis, Francis delusion syndrome, like it's like Trump delusion syndrome or something like that, which I'm gonna say right now, I don't want to ever hear about it on Twitter from various people who I consider my friend. Francis is evil. Osteen is evil. However, Osteen isn't the Pope. These people, these evil pastors that we're talking about, who deserve righteous judgment as much as anyone else does, but they deserve it more for being a wolf in sheep's clothing, need to be removed because they will stand in the way of revival. They will stand athwart it and fight it with everything they have. Hillsong will fight it. MacArthur might even fight it. All these different people might fight it for the simple reason is that real faith threatens power. It threatens the powers that be. All of a sudden, the God isn't the state or money or fear for their own souls that somebody can lie to. It's literally that Jesus Christ is enough. We have been that way. I disagree with Ken, who said that the Great Awakening after the Great. Let me see where that state thing was.
He was
Um,
saying that the Great Awakening made American dumber after every new awakening.
I completely disagree with that. Oftentimes, it was before the catalyst of great change. Let me see here. I need to look up the dates because I cannot remember the dates. So it was the 1730s through 40s. In other words, the generation that that led the revolution grew up during or around or lived through the Great Awakening. Um, they were led by Protestants to Protestants, and it basically grabbed people and set them into religion. Now, did that mean that everyone made the right decision? Absolutely not. People made dumb decisions. People always make dumb decisions. People are stupid. I'm stupid. I'm the most stupid of them all, and I'm smart, but I'm stupid. The Second Great Awakening began around 1800, and the First Great Awakening is really a reformation of the Protestant churches. The second one was essential because Jonathan Edwards and others who were a part of it more or less blasted the church people for not being Christians. The second one was about sort of spreading it out. The third one was in apparent. Sorry, the third one was in the 1850s to 1900s or so. Honestly, that doesn't feel right at all. I would say that it's 1850s past the Civil War, but not that much. More, I don't even know if I'd say that. Honestly, I don't know enough about the Third Great Awakening. The Fourth Great Awakening does not exist, even though people say it does, for the simple reason, and I know this to be true, it arose during the 1960s and 70s. In other words, it arose during a great spiritual crisis. They are mistaking the prevalence of cultural Christianity for a revival when anyone can tell you that cultural Christianity is not Christianity at all. Um, no offense to Ken, but it's not there. The Third Great Awakening is also hypothetical, but it more or less people say that it was about the religious stuff that people were doing up to the Civil War and up to the 18 something something. The thing is, I don't think it exists. For one thing, it is way too long a period. In reality, a revival doesn't take more than 20 years. It's basically a generation. It's a generational thing. I would say that if you could say that there was a third one, there was a period during the 1870s to 1890s where churches did sort of bloom, explode, but at the same time, there was an increase in moral degradation. But it was more of a reverb of the Civil War, not necessarily a true thing of its own existence. Um,
So
mm,
yeah, I've been thinking what you were saying about Francis. So I'm going to mention my take on Pope Francis is that I don't know enough about him to say to judge him personally. I simply don't know. What I do know about Francis though is that he is the wrong man at the wrong time,
yep,
and he's doing nothing. He's doing absolutely nothing. Every decision he's made, every comment he's made, virtually, with a couple of small scale exceptions that have done nothing to move the needle, has made things worse. The biggest thing of all that he's done though is nothing,
yep,
really. The biggest mistake that I believe he's made is that as people have made comments and made moves and talked about doctrines that are directly contrary to the Catholic Church, Pope Francis has said not a word. He has said things that are at the very least extremely vague, can be interpreted in the worst ways, and when people point this out, he just doesn't say anything. You know, he makes a comment about gay unions or whatever. Now, Pope Francis has not endorsed gay unions. In fact, the more concrete stuff that he said has opposed gay unions, but he will make a comment that seems very clearly to be support, or seems at least like on first blush like it could be supporting gay unions. This is such a serious issue that multiple cardinals write letters stating that he can't possibly be endorsing gay unions. And Pope Francis, in response to this, will say nothing at all. He will be completely silent. He will let people believe whatever they want. This is the Pope. Like,
right,
it's literally his job to be clear on doctrine. That's like the main thing that he does. And he just won't do it. He refuses. So, John Paul II is sometimes talked about and compared to Pope Francis, and I think this is a slander to John Paul II. John Paul II had his flaws and his faults, but he was a holy, godly man. One of it's also fascinating that John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI were two popes in a row when they are arguably two of the greatest intellectuals of the 20th century that became pope one after the other, both brilliant in different ways. Quote, John Paul II did things that I don't agree with, and he made mistakes, though I am still 100% convinced that the reason that he didn't, I'm almost sure of this, in fact, that the reason he didn't respond to the sex abuse scandal is because he was getting increasingly ill. Uh, and I think that that's the reason that he never really took it as seriously as he should have, which is horrifying. But I think that, you know, excusable. No, JP2 was not the one who put the idol on the altar. That was Francis. Uh,
Yeah, that
the
was
idol on the
Francis.
altar was Francis.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was one of the most horrifying things. And I half joked at the time that we should prepare for a pandemic, and then one happened. So just taking some credit there. Called it.
So so we have to see the numbers. Did more Catholics die than Protestants? That'll be the real thing.
Right.
Uh,
I actually did call a pandemic after he put the idol on the altar. JP2, there is an image. So things that John Paul II did that I disagree with. There is a famous image of him kissing a Quran. I think that, but from what I know of John Paul II, I believe that this was an ill-fated attempt to try and find common ground between Muslims and Christians. I think it was foolish and a mistake. But my knowledge of John Paul II is that he was a holy man. His fight against communism was 100% godly fight, since communism is arguably the single most evil philosophy of the 20th century. I mean, there are contenders, but not that many.
yep.
And that he dedicated his life to destroying communism is admirable. Also, if you actually read John Paul II is a lot more clear on theology than Pope Francis is, and is very direct about it. For example, in his book Memory and Identity, which I'm looking at a quick summary of right now, he is very much talks about the evils of the French Enlightenment, the radically atheist Marxist revolution, and abortion gay rights conferred by the European Parliament. He also claims that the virtues and weaknesses of democracy, and mentions that parliaments confer abortion rights but do nothing to defend the unborn child, which is quite correct. Uh, he criticizes utilitarianism. He does criticize early capitalism, but I believe that he is right to do so. Or if you don't like, as I've seen some people argue, if you don't like the term capitalism and consider it a slur, the free market, because again, the difference between the free market and capitalism and communism is that capitalism actually works, which means that it can be abused. Communism cannot be abused because communism doesn't work. It's evil to the core. That's the difference. However, that there are abuses that arise in free market economies that are simply different than the types that arise in other economies should be obvious and really go without saying, and he's quite correct to point that out. Uh, So the point I'm making here is that there is a qualitative and quantitative difference in the sort of pope that John Paul II was versus Francis. People criticizing Francis as a similar type of pope to John Paul II, I think, are being extremely unfair. The issue with Francis is that Francis could quite possibly have thrived. He was actually like he was an under so Francis's backstory is actually kind of badass. He was like an undercover priest in Argentina, where he was basically, traveling around sort of as a secret agent priest. Uh, when the Argentinian government started persecuting Catholics, and that's great. And he was big on, like, he would go around and he would administer to people who he would administer the Eucharist to people who couldn't get it otherwise. And he helped smuggle priests out of the country, which again is great. uh, I think that Francis probably could have thrived in a role similar to that if he was stuck in, poor areas or struggling areas, and he was supposed to be a guy who like brought the gospel to specific places. That maybe that was Francis's calling, and that's where he should have been. As the leader of the church as a whole, he was the wrong man at the wrong time, and he is handling everything in the worst possible way. How corrupt he is? I don't know, but I will say that the signs are unfortunately bad. But he really shouldn't have been in this situation.
He is, I
Mm,
believe him to be utterly corrupt, evil, and so on and so forth. I
I
do
think the
not do
signs
this.
for it are very. I think the signs. point that way in very frustrating in very horrifying ways.
And I
Specifically, his shuffling around of I can't remember the name of the priest, but he shuffles around a priest who was accused of sexual abuse, and that was when McCarrick came out and basically called him out for this. If you remember the whole McCarrick scandal.
there are so many scandals I can't recall them all. But
Well, the
also,
McCarrick thing. McCarrick was a cardinal who, I think he was removed from the cardinal, and he like wrote an open letter basically stating that like Pope Francis is shuffling around somebody who's been accused of sexual abuse and of being a big part of the scandal, and instead of actually removing him, he like moved him to China.
so
Uh,
I do
that
find it
was like a
amusing when
that was one of the worst things. That's probably the worst thing, and it's what made me really start like questioning everything with Francis.
I want there to be like, I like it whenever Catholics go, "Wow, the Catholic Church is growing in China," and it's like one of those memes where it grows bigger and bigger with the THX sign, and then it changes from 9 million Catholics to 58 million Protestants, and it's like, 58 million. Um,
I have
and
no idea how the Catholic Church is growing in China. Like you've mentioned this to me before, and I believe you, but I've always just said Christianity is growing in China. I didn't know if it was
yes,
Catholic or
Christianity
Protestant,
is explicitly growing
which
in
it is.
China. Yep.
And that's because China is having currently the worst persecution of Christians of any country in the world, the last I checked. So, of course, Christianity is growing exponentially,
Yep.
since that is what happens when you persecute Christians.
So if you'll allow me, I'll have the final word. Revival will only come when Christians get low enough that revival can be accepted. Whether it's by clearing out an entire religion's worth of officers, like in the Catholic Church, or by forcing the groundlings, the roots of the church, the members, to accept Christ or to reject him based on truth and not based on culture. Um, I'm going to, and that's just it. That's the final word. Uh, we can't have revival until we are open for revival, and we can't force it. We can't force it at all. All we can do is be trad and based and red pilled and so on, and Christ pilled and so on and so forth, whatever you want to say there. To not act that way um, is to deny Christ. At this point, there are so many excuses of culture and so on and so forth that to not be willing to sacrifice everything for Christ, to not basically say, "Yes, I'm a Christian, so what," is basically saying, "Yeah, I'm part of the world, so what." Um, Sorry, not saying I'm a Christian, so what, is basically saying I'm a part of the world, so what. Going to church, reading your Bibles, taking care of business, rebuking sinners, not buying Peter Popoff's mineral water, do not drink, and a thousand other things. I view the defense of Francis in any sort of regard as foolishness. I view the defense of these other evil people, of Joel Osteen, of Popov, as foolishness. All you have to do is say it's evil and it's not what Christ stands for. We are Christian soldiers. We are all a part of the same army. If somebody goes, "Well, the officer corps is bad," you can't go, "Well, you took their orders out of context when they put the statue on the altar. It was really a representation of Mary." Now, I haven't heard that from anyone I respect, but I have seen it in clipped Twitter comments.
Yeah,
Or
which
if
is that's bizarre and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Or with the same with Joel Osteen. Well, I support Joel Osteen because the small groups are great. Who cares if the small groups are great? You're listening to a heretic every Sunday, and you're donating to his church. Like, it doesn't matter what the spirit is. If we want revival, we cannot have it until we are able to handle it. And we are not able to handle it if everyone believes they're a Christian and no one's willing to die for it. And I say it in the general sense because you, me, other people in this chat are willing to die for our beliefs. At least I would hope so. So I'm gonna go some comments. Joel Osteen Bradford Walker says Joel Osteen have a road to Damascus moment, but he'll probably be torn apart by a bear, based and bear pilled. Fully expect the CCP to violently suppress the church as soon as they see the surge coming, invoking typing rebellion. Absolutely, but that was sort of a syncretism thing that went weird. The Chinese government is falling apart. And even though it won't fall apart soon because it is supported by massive amounts of money from outside China, the second the dams go, and they're going, it will be the death knell. Megabuster Shepherd says, nah, he gets ripped apart by Hound of Tendalos by Abdul al Razad. Protestant or Catholic, more Chinese Christians are a good thing. Yes. By the way, China is hampered by what's called the Lost Generation. Basically, they were a generation born during the time of great suffering that Mao caused, but they never lost the mindset of the suffering. So they're basically evil locust type of people. When I say a Chinese bugman, really, I'm talking about one of the members of the Lost Generation more than any other part of China. Peter Wolf agrees with Bradford. It won't work, but they'll try very hard. Yeah, but Catholic Twitter hates anime, so it can be ignored. You misunderstand. It hates anime because it's God's will. Yeah, the Lost Generation, they're boomers. So their generation, their lost.
Here's the hot take. I'm an anime fan. Catholic Twitter is mostly right.
Kool-Aid in Jonestown was mostly sugar and water. Absolutely. Weird. Yeah, so the Lost Generation is their boomers. Except they had the opposite problem happening to them. So it's basically the same spirit, except from poverty, not from riches. All right, that's it. We've said all we had to say. Revival won't come until enough suffering is able to bring it apart, and that means the dissolution of American Christian culture, which is not Christian at all and barely a culture. It means the dissolution of all these evil people and all these evil things, and may God cast judgment on those who deserve it. Anthony, do you have anything else to say?
The Joel Osteen board game is going to be a blast.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll have to do it now. I'll once you get it, tell me, and we'll probably do it the week after or something.
I don't know how we're going to set it up, but it's going to be fun. Probably I'll have like a camera pointing at it and I'll have
Yeah.
to move all you guys.
Yeah, probably.
That's okay. Which is fine.
Get
That
your
works.
sister in there so we can have like two girls instead of just one. Just saying. Just saying. We need women for these things. We need our what was that one girl who was popular among nerds years ago? I can't remember. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We love you dearly. Thank you for supporting us. Please do check out our subscribe star and other things because supporting us means that we will make new content, and I've got to pay for this board game somehow. Joel Osteen isn't cheap. He demands the best from me so I can give the best to myself, so I can give the best to him, to God, to... oh no. I'm ending the stream before Joel Osteen takes a while. He's reaching through the screen. He's reaching through the screen from...
Don't forget to look for John C. Wright's Book of Feasts and Seasons audiobook, narrated by